Undercover boss grabs breakfast. Freezes as he discovers Waitress is skipping meals to feed her kids. Sometimes the world doesn't break you all at once. Seat chips away quietly until you forget who you used to be. That thought haunted Jackson Cole as he stood on the cracked sidewalk outside the Sunrise Diner. His breath visible in the early morning chill. The sun hadn't fully risen yet, casting the sky in a dull gray glow that matched the way he'd been feeling for months. He tugged the brim of his baseball cap lower and zipped up his jacket. The disguise was simple: scruffy beard, second-hand boots, and a name tag that read J. It was enough. No one would recognize him as the CEO of Colehart Hospitality, the billion-dollar chain that had quietly acquired this local diner 6 months ago. The place used to be a community staple. Now it was one of over 300 franchise test locations, which meant tighter margins, standardized procedures, and silence from the top. As Jackson stepped inside, a bell jingled over the door. The smell of bacon and burnt coffee filled his nose. He hadn't been in a restaurant this small in years. The staff bustled behind the counter, eyes weary, smiles forced. There was a weight in the air, the kind that doesn't show up on spreadsheets. A waitress, maybe late 20s, wiped down a booth with a limp wrist and a hollow gaze. Her uniform was clean, but threadbare at the seams. She didn't see him watching, but something about her already pulled at something deep inside him, something he thought he'd lost long ago. Jackson slid into a booth in the corner of those cracked vinyl seats that creaked under weight and time. From here, he could see the whole diner without drawing attention. He picked up a laminated menu, not to read it, but to observe. The waitress with the worn uniform moved quickly, gracefully even, though her eyes stayed low, and her steps betrayed exhaustion. She greeted customers with practiced warmth, but the sparkle that once might have been there long gone. Her name tag read Elena. He watched her refill a regular's coffee, offer a soft joke, then shuffle back toward the kitchen. That's when he caught it. A voice from behind the swinging door. Sharp. Irritated. She hasn't eaten again. Christ. Elena. You're gonna faint in front of customers one day. Then what? You think the boss man's gonna give a damn? Jackson froze mid-sip of his coffee. Elena's voice came next. Quieter but firm. It's fine. I packed the kids' lunches. That's all that matters. Yeah. But skipping meals 3 shifts in a row isn't fine. You think he even knows who you are? There was a pause. Something heavy in that silence. Jackson's stomach clenched. The kitchen door flapped slightly open, and he caught a glimpse of Elena turning away. Her face pale but composed. She leaned on the counter just for a second before catching herself, straightening, smiling. Then she came back out to the floor. She approached his booth. Morning, she said, her voice too bright. Coffee's fresh if you want a top-up. You look like you've had a long night. Jackson nodded, swallowed a lump in his throat, and held out his cup. Yeah. Long night. She filled it carefully, her hands steady. But her sleeves rolled up just enough for him to notice the fading red marks around her wrist pressure lines. Like from tying something too tight. Grocery bags. Maybe food, pantry bags. He didn't know yet. But he noticed. Pancake combos on special. She added. Kids love it. Even the picky ones. Kids. Jackson offered a quiet smile. Good to know. She moved on before he could ask anything more. A couple minutes later, he watched her walk past the counter, open her small purse behind the register, and slide a banana and a single granola bar inside. Her fingers hesitated over them before she zipped the bag shut and placed it on a shelf. Not for her. For someone else? That's when it hit him hard and cold. She wasn't skipping meals for vanity, or budgeting for rent. She was going hungry, so her children didn't have to. He sat there, ashamed of the logo printed on the napkin beside his plate. Coal Heart. A company named after compassion. And here was a woman working under that name, starving quietly in a corner booth of one of his very own restaurants. And he never knew. Jackson stayed long after his plate was cleared. He watched the ebb and flow of customers. The way the morning rush melted into the awkward quiet of mid-morning. Elena never slowed. She moved like a shadow, efficient, quiet, present, but invisible. The kind of worker executives love on paper, but forget in real life. After she disappeared for her 10-minute break, Jackson quietly slipped toward the kitchen door. A younger cook in his 20s stood behind the line, arms crossed, leaning near the back wall where the time clock sat. Jackson approached casually. "You been here long?" he asked. Voice low, casual. The cook eyed him up and down. "Couple months. Transferred from Mason Street when they turned this place corporate." Jackson nodded. "What about her?" He nodded subtly toward the back door Elena had gone through. The cook's tone shifted. Softer now. "Elena. Man, she's the reason this place still works. Been here years. Like, since way before the buyout. She trained half of us. How's she treated?" The cook gave a humorless laugh. "Like furniture. Corporate cut her hours last fall. Then they took away her overtime. She still shows up early and leaves late. Thinks no one notices. That's sick." Familiar weight pressed down in Jackson's chest. He knew the policy. He wrote it. Tighten margins across low-yield properties. The memo read, "Remove overtime incentives. Focus on volume. Reduce waste. Monitor staffing levels." Elena had a name. But to the data, she was just a headcount. Jackson lingered outside during her break. A few minutes later, she returned from the alley, tucking her phone into her pocket. Her shoulders were tense, eyes red, but her face was already resetting to that same soft expression she wore for customers. She didn't see him watching as she passed a trash can and paused, glancing at a paper taped inside the lid. He squinted. It was a printed schedule. Her name had been moved down. Fewer shifts. She sighed, then walked back in. Back inside? Jackson pulled out his burner phone and looked up her employee file through the internal app. An app only district managers and above could access. He'd built it for efficiency. Now it felt invasive. Her name, Elena Morales. 32 years old. Employed 7 years. Single mother of 2. Performance reviews. Excellent. Customer satisfaction, top 5%. Manager notes from 6 months ago, promote to lead server if budget allows. Then the next entry. Budget freeze. Recommendation shelved. Reevaluate next fiscal. Jackson closed the app. He wasn't just looking at a server's record. He was staring at a roadmap of his own failures. She'd given everything to the company. Loyalty, time, energy, even her meals. And all she got in return was a freeze. A freeze he'd signed off on without a second glance. He stepped outside again. Air colder now. Ski graier. Elena Morales wasn't just another employee lost in the shuffle. She was the heart he'd left behind. It happened by accident. The confrontation. Jackson had intended to leave quietly that day, come back under a better pretense. Maybe as a regional training consultant, so he could talk with staff more freely. But something in him wouldn't let it wait. Elena was walking out of the back door as he rounded the corner near the dumpster. Their eyes met under the drab gray of a mid-morning sky. She looked surprised, but not afraid. She gave a polite nod. That same customer service smile. "You okay?" he asked. The words escaped before he could stop them. She hesitated. "Yeah. Just tired." Her voice was soft. Too calm for someone clearly drowning. Jackson nodded slowly. "I overheard something. Back in the kitchen. About you not eating." A flicker of fear crossed her face. Not shame, fear. As if a confession might cost her everything. "I'm fine," she said quickly, brushing past him. But Jackson didn't move. "Elena, why are you skipping meals?" His voice cracked a little. More human than he'd intended. She froze. Turned. "Who are you?" Her tone wasn't rude. Just guarded. Suspicious. Tired of strangers asking questions they didn't actually want the answers to. Jackson swallowed hard. "Just someone who's been in your shoes more than you'd think." She studied him for a beat. Then sighed. "Look. I'm not here for pity. I do what I have to do. That's how it is. My kids eat. I'm good. You shouldn't have to choose between feeding them and feeding yourself," he said quietly. Elena's eyes glistened. Her shoulders tensed. The dam cracked. "You think I don't know that?" Her voice rose now. But it didn't come from anger, it came from exhaustion. "I was a full-time lead. Before Colehart took over. I trained new hires. Balanced orders in my head. I love this place." She laughed bitterly, voice shaking. "But then the hours got cut. No overtime. No races. My son needed new shoes. And I had to choose between that and groceries. My daughter's asthma meds aren't covered under the new insurance plan. And the manager here, he says his hands are tied. Corporate policy." She looked away. "And all this, from a company that says it has heart in the name." Jackson felt it like a good punch. The word heart. His father chose it decades ago when the business started with one hotel and a diner just like this. "People first," he'd said. "Or the rest doesn't matter." Jackson had buried that motto somewhere along the way under expansion plans, growth charts, and quarterly reviews. "I didn't ask to be saved," Elena said, softer now. "I just didn't think working myself to the bone would mean I'd still go hungry." Her voice cracked on that last word. Hungry. Jackson couldn't speak. Not yet. Not with the lump rising in his throat. He wasn't ready for what he was feeling, the guilt, the regret, the realization that somewhere along the way, his company stopped seeing people like Elena as people. They had turned her into a number. But he saw her now. And he couldn't look away. That night, Jackson couldn't sleep. He sat on the edge of a stiff motel bed, elbows on his knees, face buried in his hands as the hum of a cheap refrigerator buzzed in the corner. The disguise he'd worn earlier, the cap, the fake beard, the boots with just enough scuff to look humble sat in a pile on the carpet. It wasn't Elena's words that haunted him most. It was the calmness with which she delivered them. No rage. No pleas. Just resignation. Like a person who'd been disappointed so many times. She didn't expect anything better. That quiet surrender rattled him. Because somewhere along the road to building an empire, he had become the kind of man people expected nothing from. He opened his laptop. The company portal greeted him, Colehart Hospitality, where people come first. The tagline felt like a mockery. He clicked into internal reports. Location, Sunrise Diner. Last quarter, marginal profit increase due to cost restructuring. Translation. They cut hours. Frozeres. And squeezed staff until the numbers looked good. A corporate manager had even praised the sunrise location in an email. Lean. Efficient team. No excess labor. No overtime payouts. Ideal model. Jackson felt sick. Elena's name was buried deep in the files, a star performer repeatedly flagged for potential promotion. Then passed over each time with a red note. Budget locked de faire avancement. Every memo. Every policy update. Every gutless line of executive praise for cutting corners, he'd approved them all. Not because he didn't care. Because he stopped looking. Somewhere, along the line. The mission had changed. It was never supposed to be about dominating markets or hitting record profits every quarter. His father, Harold Cole, started with a single roadside inn. And his philosophy had been brutally simple. Take care of the people, and the business will take care of itself. Jackson had admired that, and then he'd forgotten it. His growth strategy had worked. Colehart was a $2.8 billion empire, now. But somewhere in that meteoric rise, he had traded people for policies, and Elena Morales had been crushed beneath them. He closed the laptop. A memory bubbled up faint. Blurry. Painful. He was 12. Sitting in a booth like the one at the Sunrise Diner. Watching his mom cry behind a coffee cup. She had just lost her job. Harold Cole, his dad, had slid across a check and whispered something to the waitress before walking out, without saying a word. Later, Jackson asked why. Because she didn't need a lecture. His father said. She needed a little mercy. Jackson's throat tightened. How had he forgotten that? How had he become the man who ignored a mother skipping meals to feed her children? He hadn't meant to hurt anyone. He'd just been moving fast. Thinking big. Looking up. But now he was looking down at the foundation. And it was cracking. No boardroom apology could undo what had happened. No quarterly bonus could feed a child. And no slogan, no matter how heartfelt, could replace real human dignity. Jackson didn't know exactly how he'd fix this. But he knew one thing. It had to start with Elena. The next morning, Jackson walked back into the Sunrise Diner. No disguise. No hat. No fake name tag. Just himself, clean-shaven. Pressed shirt. Slacks. And a heaviness in his chest he hadn't felt in years. Heads turned. Elena was wiping down the counter when she looked up. Her smile started out of habit, then froze. Her eyes narrowed slightly. It took a second, just one, for her to recognize him. Not as Jay, the quiet drifter from the day before, but as him, Jackson Cole, CEO. The man behind the curtain. The man behind her pain. She didn't say a word. I'd like a minute. If you'll let me, he said quietly. Not wanting to draw attention. She hesitated. Her co-worker glanced between them, sensing the tension, but wisely said nothing. Finally, Elena nodded and gestured to the booth in the far corner. The same one he'd sat in before. The seat still had the faint crease from his last visit. He sat across from her. She didn't touch the menu. Didn't lean in. Just folded her arms and waited. I came back because I owe you an apology. Jackson began. His voice was low. Reverent. What happened to you? What we allowed to happen, it's not right. I didn't know. And that's not an excuse. That's the failure. She blinked slowly. So now you know. What do you want me to do with that? Jackson nodded. He deserved that. I'd like to make it right. Her expression barely shifted. Make it right. She echoed. Bitter amusement flickering in her voice. Can you give me back the hours I lost? The meals I skipped? The nights I told my kids we were having sleepy dinners, code for no food because I couldn't afford one more trip to the grocery store. Jackson's throat burned. No, he admitted. I can't undo what's been done. But I can start changing the system that let it happen. Starting here? Starting with you. She tilted her head. Skeptical. I'd like to reinstate you full-time. With back pay for missed overtime. And offer you a management training path. One that doesn't disappear the second a spreadsheet gets tight. I've already spoken to the regional director. Her face gave nothing away. He leaned forward. You don't owe me anything. You don't even have to say thank you. Just know I see you now. And I'm going to fight for you. If you'll let me. Elena stood slowly. She didn't yell. Didn't cry. She just looked at him, really looked, with 7 years' worth of tired trust fraying at the edges. I've heard a lot of promises from men in suits, she said. They always sound good. Especially when they're trying to fix their conscience. She picked up her apron from the booth. If you're serious, I'll know soon enough. But right now, I have 3 tables and a kid at home who still needs dinner. So, if you'll excuse me. She walked away. Not with defiance. Not with anger. But with the quiet power of someone who's been disappointed too many times to believe in words alone. Jackson sat in that booth for a long time. This wasn't going to be fixed overnight. But he wasn't leaving. Not until his actions started speaking louder than every apology he could ever offer. 3 days later, a letter arrived at every Coalheart hospitality location across the country. It wasn't a quarterly memo. Not a performance review. Not a cost-cutting directive. It was a personal letter, signed by Jackson Cole himself. We forgot who we were. And I take responsibility. Elena didn't read it right away. She'd seen corporate PR before. Glossy words. Empty promises. The kind meant to pacify the front line long enough to keep the stock price steady. But this letter, something was different. Across the country, employees whispered. Some cried. Some rolled their eyes. But all of them read it. Inside the letter, Jackson announced a sweeping reversal of Coalheart's most controversial internal policies. Overtime caps, gone. Shift hour reductions, lifted. Meal stipends for all hourly staff, effective immediately. Every franchise location was ordered to establish a dignity fund emergency aid for any team member in crisis. Then came the part no one saw coming. A new initiative, the Morales Plan. Named, publicly, after her. The policy outlined a guaranteed advancement pathway for veteran staff, especially single parents, caregivers, and high-performing employees, historically overlooked due to budget freezes. The press picked it up within hours. News outlets asked, "Who is Elena Morales?" She didn't speak to reporters. She kept her head down and her apron tied. But her co-workers started looking at her differently, not with pity, but pride. The following week, Jackson returned to the Sunrise Diner. This time with a small team, not executives, but reform officers, people with clipboards, listening ears, and zero interest in fluff. They held a town hall right there in the dining room. Staff were invited to speak freely. No filters. No retaliation. Elena didn't want to go. But a coworker nudged her gently. "You started this?" She whispered. "You should hear what comes next." So she came. Jackson stood in the center, no podium. No formality. Just him. "I got lost in the numbers," he admitted. "I forgot there were lives behind every policy. But someone reminded me." He turned, looked at Elena just for a second and kept going. This isn't just about fixing a diner. It's about fixing us. The kind of company we've become. And I'm not asking for your trust back. I'm going to earn it. At the end, staff applauded, hesitant at first. Then rising. Some cried. Elena stood still, arms crossed, but her eyes didn't look so guarded anymore. 2 days later, she received a call from HR. Not a recruiter. Not a manager. Jackson himself. Your promotion paperwork is ready. He told her. And I know, it's just a start. But I hope you'll let it be one. There was a long silence. Then finally, softly, Elena replied, We'll see. Jackson smiled. It was more than he expected. Less than he hoped. But it was real. The door chimed. It was a quiet Tuesday morning. A lull between the breakfast crowd and the lunch rush. Most of the staff were busy prepping for the midday flow. Elena wasn't scheduled, not anymore. She had stepped away for a few days after the town hall. Unsure of what came next. Or if she even wanted to be part of whatever this new direction was. But now, here she was. Back. The sound of her boots on the tile drew a few glances. The same uniform. Freshly pressed. Her name tag still read Elena. But something about the way she walked, chin up, eyes steady, felt different. Not hardened. Just whole. Jackson was standing near the coffee station, helping restock cups with one of the trainees when he looked up and saw her. For a moment, he froze, unsure whether to speak, approach, or just give her space. Elena stepped forward first. Is the position still open? She asked. Her voice calm. Clear. Jackson blinked. Then smiled. Not the polished CEO smile. But something warmer. More human. Yes. It's yours if you want it. She nodded. Then I'm here. On one condition. He waited. I don't want to be your poster child. She said, holding his gaze. If I'm coming back, I want to work. I want to earn it. But not as some example for the press. Just as me. Jackson nodded. The weight of her words, not lost on him. Then we'll do it your way. They shook hands. For the first time. The contact didn't feel transactional. It felt like a contract, one not signed on paper, but forged in shared accountability. The staff watched with quiet curiosity. A few of them smiled. One of the dishwashers, a teenager who'd only worked there a month, whispered, She's the one from the letter. Isn't she? Someone else replied, Yeah. She's the reason we got hot meals again. That afternoon, Elena was behind the counter, walking a trainee through the new ticket system. She answered questions, shared tips, and jumped in to help when the kitchen got slammed with a surprise rush. She moved with the same grace. But this time, her eyes weren't hollow. Her posture wasn't defensive. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was leading. A customer asked for her by name. Said he saw her photo in an article online. She offered a polite smile but kept working. The point wasn't recognition. It was restoration. Jackson sat at the corner booth. Laptop open. But barely typing. He couldn't take his eyes off the transformation, not just of her, but the diner itself. The energy was different. Staff moved with purpose. Conversations weren't whispered complaints, but shared laughter. Someone even brought in a Bluetooth speaker and played soft jazz during the cleanup shift. Elena was still Elena. But now, people finally saw her. He'd offered a second chance. But she was the one breathing life back into a place that had forgotten how to care. The diner used to run on fumes and forgotten faces. Now it ran on something else entirely. 3 weeks after Elena's return. Sunrise, Diner didn't just function, it thrived. The changes were subtle at first. The ancient radio got replaced with a community playlist, the team curated together. The griddle got cleaned properly, not just wiped down. Someone started bringing in extra muffins to share with the morning crew. The staff started calling it the turnaround. Elena, now, officially, assistant manager, stood at the heart of it all. She'd never wanted a title. What she wanted was what she'd always given others, a shot to be seen. She trained with care, not control. When the youngest server, Danny, messed up an order and nearly burst into tears, Elena took the heat without flinching, then quietly pulled her aside, walked her through it, and bought her a smoothie afterward, with her own tip money. Jackson watched all of it, not from a distance, but beside her. He returned every few days, not to oversee, but to learn. He bussed tables, poured coffee, even washed dishes once during a rush. His staff offered to take over. He waved them off. "This place taught me more in a week than any boardroom ever did," he said once, towel slung over his shoulder. He wasn't just changing the diner, he was changing himself. And it showed. Coalhart's leadership model began evolving. Quietly, but unmistakably. Each franchise now had a voice representative, a regular employee empowered to report issues directly to upper management, bypassing bureaucratic choke points. Elena's influence could be felt in every line of the new manual, especially the golden rule printed on the inside cover. People first, or the rest doesn't matter. One morning, a mother came in with 2 kids, a toddler on her hip, and a little girl with tangled hair and shy eyes. Elena brought them pancakes. On the house, the mother, flustered and embarrassed, said she forgot her wallet. Elena just smiled and whispered, "You're good. Feed your babies." Jackson caught the moment from across the room. It broke him in the best way. Later that day, he added another line to the company's new mission draft. "Serve the person, not the purchase." The staff felt the shift, not because of announcements or slogans, but because they mattered again. Morale was up. Zover tips. Turnover dropped by 70% in just a month. Customers noticed, too. "You guys feel different," one said. "Like a real place again." Elena didn't take the credit. She never would. But when she locked up at night, walking through the kitchen and turning off each light with care, there was a quiet pride in her eyes. A sense of belonging that had once been ripped from her, now restored. And Jackson, he didn't need to ask if the changes were working. He could see it in every corner, in every smile, in every full plate handed to a hungry child. Right. Part 10 of Undercover. Boss grabs breakfast, freezes as he discovers Waitress is skipping meals to feed her kids. Part 10. Emotional ending. Approximately 300 words. The sun had barely crested the horizon when the bell above the door rang. Elena was already inside, prepping the register and making sure the morning coffee was hot. She didn't expect anyone for another 20 minutes. But there he was. Jackson. No suit. No clipboard. Just a to-go tray with 2 cups of coffee and a small brown bag. He held it up sheepishly. "Figured you shouldn't start your shift without eating." She stared at him for a moment, then cracked a smile, small, but real. "You're learning." He placed the tray on the counter. "No title today," he said. "Just Jackson." She nodded. "Just Elena." Behind them, a tiny voice called out, "Mommy." Elena turned. Her daughter, Sophia, stood in the doorway, still in pajamas, holding a crayon drawing in her hand. Jackson's breath caught. Sophia ran behind the counter and threw her arms around Elena's waist. Elena bent down and kissed the top of her head. Jackson looked away for a moment, not out of discomfort, but reverence, like he was witnessing something sacred. Sophia looked up at him, then handed him the drawing. A stick figure family, smiling, standing under a heart. "This is you," she said, pointing at the tall one in the middle. He took it gently, swallowing hard. "I don't know if I deserve that," he whispered. Elena looked at him, really looked at him. "Maybe not before," she said, "but you're getting there." Outside, the street began to stir. Inside, a second chance was already in motion. Because sometimes redemption doesn't roar in. It returns quietly with pancakes, hot coffee, and a little girl, reminding a grown man what a heart is really for. Serve the person, not the purchase, and everything changes. If this story moved you, subscribe and follow us for more true tales of second chances and human transformation.